This is Peter Summit of Crashing Wayward, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 382 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week we've got a fun one for you because Peter Summit of Crashing Wayward is returning to the podcast. He's here to talk about the band's new album, Listen, and a ton of other great stuff. We're going to get to that here shortly, talk about another couple things beforehand as always. I'm recording this in between work trips in Colorado and San Francisco. I didn't think I was going to be able to get this out this week, but I am very happy that I am able to. This was recorded, I think, about 3 weeks ago, so it's due time that we get this episode out for you featuring Peter. He was actually on this podcast on episode 372. That was only 10 episodes ago, but it was actually, I should have looked at the date, and I believe it was like March maybe now, because there was a period between April and May where I only got a couple episodes out, so that's why. It's only been 10 episodes, but there's been some time in there. So I was very happy to get Peter back on here to talk about the album now that it's out and that I had a chance to hear all the music. But before we jump into that, I need to let you know who we're sponsored by, and that would be Sunset Tattoo. Sunset Tattoo is a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper, they're state licensed, and they are mother approved. Well over 25 years of experience from Jake and his crew over there at Sunset Tattoo. If you call or message ahead of time, you can set up a time to go in and talk about what work you're looking to have done. They also accept walk-ins. They're great at suggestions and helping you through if you're not exactly sure what you're looking for. Hit them up on the socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. There's tons of photos on there from throughout the years. They specialize and excel at all different styles. I've personally had work done by Jake. I know many others that have as well. I'm very happy with it, and I'm looking forward to having more done here in the near future as well, which is what you need to do. So hit up Sunset Tattoo and let them know you heard about them right here on Thunder Underground. We've also got DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based right here in Tulsa, who has brought tons of great acts to the area over the past several years. Bands like Megadeth, Poison, Tom Kiefer, Lamb of God, LA Guns, Snoop Dogg, Nelly, Ice Cube, Saxon, Last in Line, Buck Cherry, Winger. The list is great and long. Hit up debconcerts.com to be kept up to date on everything they're doing. Follow them on the socials. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are all DEB Concerts. DEB Concerts also books the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. This year is no exception, and Rocklahoma is coming up here very shortly. Less than a month away. It's Labor Day weekend. 3 days of rock and roll, but there's actually 4. And if you have the ticket to all 3 days, you can go to that 4th day, which is the pre-party, which is entirely put on the Roadhouse stage by DEB Concerts, and that'll be headlined by Warrant. LA Guns will also be on that stage. It's a full night of rock and roll. You don't want to miss it. The other 3 days of Rocklahoma on the Roadhouse stage, it'll be headlined by Buck Cherry, Skid Row, and Kix. All 3 of those bands are amazing live bands as well. Skid Row has a great new singer, Eric Grunwald, who is fucking phenomenal. You don't want to miss that. And Kix, like I've said every week. Their final performance is maybe a month and a half after Rocklahoma in the Baltimore area. So this is one of the final shows that Kix will ever be doing. I know, bands come back all the time. But Kix is one of those bands that, if they say they're retiring, for some reason I kind of believe it. They've been doing this for 40 years, and they're one of the best live bands that you will ever see. In fact, of the 15 years of Rocklahoma that I've been to, all 15, Kix in year number 2 was my favorite performance in the history of Rocklahoma. That's something else I'm going to be talking about here coming up soon, because we're going to do a Rocklahoma preview episode like I do every year. And I've got a special guest that's going to be joining me, someone else that has been to every single Rocklahoma as well. So that'll be fun to talk about. But in the meantime, do not forget to hit up DEB Concerts on all the socials. And if you're out there, of course, say hey to me. Say hey to Doug Burgess from DEB Concerts and tell him thanks for everything he does at Rocklahoma and for the Oklahoma area as well. All right, before we jump into this interview with Peter, something I want to talk about is something that was just announced 2 or 3 days ago. A super group has formed, which Whoa, I know that's a big shocker. And I say that sarcastically. But hey, I'm not saying that sarcastically about supergroups because I fucking love them. Any of these ones that come out in the rock or metal world, I check them out. More often than not, I like them. Some of them fall flat. Some of them are beyond amazing. Like the Night Flight Orchestra or the Winery Dogs. I mean, we're talking next level bands. Some of the best musicians in the world coming together and making an amazing band. But throughout the past, decade or so, there's been tons of supergroups formed, and tons of them have just been, quote unquote projects to where they record an album, don't really ever tour. Revolution Saints is an example. They put out great music, but, they don't go out and tour or anything because all those guys have major projects going on. Frontiers Records has put out tons of these. Other, guys in the metal world have, formed these things, especially during the pandemic. It happened a lot. But getting to the point here, this one that was just announced, it almost feels like it was tailor-made just for me. As I'm a fan of these guys individually, and I'm really looking forward to what they do when they come together. You've got Jack Gibson from Exodus on bass. Then on the drums, you've got Jason Bittner from Shadows Fall and Overkill. Jason Bittner is one of the best drummers in metal. He is one of the most underrated drummers in metal, in my opinion, because you don't hear his name come up the way it should, I think, when you're talking about those guys. Phenomenal drummer. And that's just the beginning here, folks. Mike Orlando, the guitarist from Adrenaline Mob. This guy is a phenom. And when I was talking to Jason, who used to co-host this podcast with me about this, as much as I love the next couple guys I'm going to mention, Jason mentioned it is so cool to see Mike Orlando involved in something like this because since Adrenaline Mob disbanded, you haven't really seen much from him outside of a couple solo things. So it's really cool to see him involved in something like this. Then you've got Phil Dimmel, the guitarist of Violence and the former guitarist of Machine Head. Machine Head's one of my all-time favorite metal bands. Phil Dimmel wasn't the original guitarist, Logan Matter was, but Phil was there during a huge chunk of Machine Head's career and put out some of their best music. Phenomenal guitar tone, phenomenal sound, absolutely love this guy. And if you paid attention to the world of metal in the past few years, this guy has stepped in at the drop of a hat for several different bands, including Slayer and others. I'm talking like some of these have been like on 2 days' notice where someone got sick or someone had to leave a tour or something happened. Phil Dimmel is now the go-to guitarist, and this guy does it and does it at the highest level. Okay, and then every band has to have a vocalist. And when it comes to heavy metal, my favorite vocalist of all time is Mike Patton. But I've never looked at him as a metal vocalist, even though obviously what Mr. Bungle is doing now is metal, Phantomus is metal, Tomahawk is metal, but I didn't really look at, old Mr. Bungle and Faith No More as metal, even though metal, Faith No More definitely has metal tendencies, especially, on Angel Dust and King for a Day. But the point being said, my favorite straight up heavy metal vocalist of all time is John Bush. Of course, of Armored Saint and formerly of Anthrax. The guy is just, I don't even need to put it into words. If you listen to metal, you know what John Bush can do. So there you go. Those 5 guys together, I'm sure I'm hyping myself up too much, but it said they're working on an album. The band name is as yet undisclosed. So as soon as there's more information on that, I'm sure I'll be talking about it. As far as rock and metal go, hard rock and metal, the past couple weeks, just the other day, last Friday, Mammoth, WVH, Wolfgang Van Halen's band, the new album just came out last Friday, called Mammoth 2. You gotta wonder, I don't know what, I swear I wasn't going to do this, because every other dumbass does it. I somehow have to bring up Van Halen, when you're talking about Wolfgang. It's his last name, but I meant the actual band. I'm just bringing it up because I just thought of that Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2. Is he can, they didn't have Van Halen 3 until almost 20 years later, I guess. But so maybe, I wonder if he'll do that. The third album will have a title, and then we'll jump to Mammoth 3 like 20 years down the road. Because I guarantee you this guy is going to be doing this thing for a long time. This album's phenomenal, just like the first one. If you're not checking out Mammoth and you're into stuff like, Alter Bridge, Tremonti, Seven Dust, that vein of hard rock and metal, you'll absolutely love Mammoth. He's a phenom at everything. The bass, the guitar, his vocals, everything he does it at a high level. I guess when you have that Van Halen blood running through you, that's just the way things work. And also, speaking of Seven Dust, the week before that, their newest album came out, and it's fucking killer as well, because Seven Dust doesn't do anything less than killer. The first couple songs are a little bit different for Seven Dust. There's some even heavier than normal stuff for Seven Dust with vocal-wise and everything. But it's got your signature Seven Dust on there as well. So definitely check that one out if you're a fan. All right, let's jump into this. Crashing Wayward. Like I said earlier, 10 episodes ago, Peter was on here, but he wasn't alone. He was also with Sean McKee, the drummer of Crashing Wayward. So that's a cool episode that you should go back and check out. We talked about, at that point, the upcoming album, and we talked about a lot of other great stuff, that the band had going on, that those, the two of their histories, how the band came together, all that stuff. But on this one, Peter and I focused more on the album Listen, which, pun intended, you definitely need to do. Listen to this album. 11 tracks, 34 minutes long. You gotta love albums like that. You pack it all in. There's no filler. That's what you want from your music, right? My favorite track on this is Breathe. And I spoke about this before. Actually, last time I had him on, I talked about this. I just latched onto this song the first time I heard it. It's the first song I heard from them. And then I went back and checked out the other singles that they had before that, like Disco Kills and Stranger Days. Both excellent songs, and the cool thing about those three songs, when I'd heard them, they all three vary in styles from each other. And then this album came out, 11 tracks, and it does the same thing. All these songs, which is something else we talked about here, and we talked about it last time, is that these guys are great at bringing in all different styles of rock, hard rock, alternative, heavy stuff. You might even get a little bluesy or Zeppelin-y at times. Just Peter's a huge fan of the Cult, and you got that kind of, I don't even know what the right word is to use, when you think of Ian Astbury and, the stuff he's done with the Cult and what he did with the Doors, that Jim Morrison essence, and then like I said, Zeppelin. When you think of all that stuff, that kind of, the ambiance that kind of music brings, when it's not just your straightforward hard rock. That's what Crashing Wayward does. Even though I'm not saying they sound like either of those bands, which is great, which is what you want. Crashing Wayward also features Stacey David Blades, who was a member of LA Guns at one point. Like I said earlier, Phil Lewis and Tracy Guns have been on this podcast before. Side note, check that out if you have not. But anyway, Listen, it's a phenomenal album. Peter also talks about their album release show that, quote unquote, opened by Shinedown. Their album release show was built around this acoustic performance by Shinedown. And it was this huge event that they kind of put together in Vegas, which is a really cool deal. Kind of a side note, this is 2 episodes in a row now where we're talking about Shinedown through someone else, because Chris McLernan, the bass player from Saigon Kick and Cold Sweat, now has a band called Canel. He was on recently, we talked about that. And his new album by Canel, was mixed by Eric Bass of Shinedown. He talked a lot about Brent Smith. And Barry Kirsch, the drummer, played drums on the Canel album. Going back a few years, I'll bring this back around to this podcast. Jason Todd, the original guitarist from Shinedown, was on this podcast, so that's one you can check out as well. Enough about Shinedown. We're here to talk about Crashing Wayward. So what we're going to do now is just jump into this and let Peter tell you some stuff, because I'm sure that's why you're here. So here you go. Here's Peter Summit of Crashing Wayward.
Since last time I talked to you, lots happened. Albums come out. You've had an album release show. Lots of stuff been going on. How's the last couple months been for you in general? How's it felt?
It feels amazing to finally have the album out there. Honestly, we are ready for a lot more, but it's great. The reception that we've been getting so far on the album is amazing. Knock on wood, there hasn't been anything that has brought us to tears in, like anger or sadness at a bad review or anything. And, the reception's been super awesome, just on everything so far. So we're just trying to get as many eyes on us as possible at this point. And hopefully we have enough on this album that will carry us through at least, well into next year. We have some good ideas that I think we're going to start rolling out here soon.
So I'm sure, because you guys had 3 songs out there for quite a while. So I'm sure being able to get all these tracks out for everybody to hear finally feels good after a couple years.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, it's cool because I've been listening to these songs, and it's kind of like from the infancy state of tracking to rough mixes to even just sitting on the final mixes for a little bit, just planning on its release. We have those, and I could listen to those for the last, year and a half or so. And you think that it kind of gets old, and then you put out the work, and it's brand new even for me again, which is really awesome. And what's really cool too is kind of like what people are gravitated to as far as what are their favorite songs. Some that I thought would be like the most definite as the top 5 or so. It's actually kind of like there's some surprise like sleepers for me that are like people are really gravitating towards. So it's really cool to see. So it's all fresh and new,
What have you heard from people, like, as far as that goes, like that has surprised you as far as the album tracks?
Yeah, I think that because, we're like a rock band, and right now, especially under RFK, a lot of our fans are like the core, rock fan, hard rock and some metal and stuff like that. And, we're kind of like on that, umbrella of like modern alternative hard rock spectrum. And so I thought that a lot of people be gravitated towards the really heavier stuff at first, which they are. But surprisingly, when, people are coming back and saying Stranger Days is their favorite, or Tilly is their favorite, or Velvet's Drawn, which are like the more mid-tempo. I use the term ballad loosely on those, but, that those are resonating with people, And I think just musically and lyrically, it's kind of like hitting people in a different way. It's really cool.
My first listen, I did gravitate towards the heavier stuff, kind of like Death on Holiday or Shake the Dead Awake.
Right.
But really, after listening to it, Paper Airplane Heart really jumped out to me. And that's kind of one I've went back to, I think, more than any of them when I've listened to the album.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's cool that you say that, because we've actually adopted that kind of like as our icon right now, which is a Paper Airplane Heart. It's on our Instagram.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, people have been, really kind of resonating with that one as well too. So it's really cool to hear that it has for you as well.
I mean, the thing that jumped out to me most about this album is something, we had talked about before, and I'm sure you've talked about in many interviews, is the varying sounds that you guys do. It's cool to hear it all in a cohesive album where you've got, like you said, alternative sounds, hard rock sounds, kind of esoteric sounds at times, and it all kind of just works together and flows well.
Right. Yeah. I think that's we were really trying to be mindful of that as well too, with kind of like the sequence of the album, because a lot of you can, with the way people listen to music now, digital, you know, with digitally and streaming and everything, you can just kind of like feel like you can just throw it out there and people will just play whatever ones they like, you know. But for us, we really wanted to make sure that I know that when I listen to an album, I want to hear it from its sequence and how it feels and flows and everything. And so we were really mindful with that and putting it together. So I think there's, you know, nice little ebbs and flows in there, like what you were speaking of, for sure.
Well, what you just said kind of goes into a question I had. I've always kind of wondered about bands on their debut album. You know, obviously a lot of thought process goes into the sequencing of these songs. So whenever you go into the live setting and you're playing songs off of one album, I assume that the instinct is to want to play these songs in order that they are on the album, but most
Right.
people don't do that. So like,
Right.
how do you rearrange them for the live show to where it still makes sense to you?
I think that really comes down to a lot of that, you know, musically, that's going to come down to, because right now we don't have guitar techs, you know, sometimes we do. It depends on what show we're playing. If we're on the road, usually it's just us. So guitar changes go into play with that, you know, depending on what song is going into what key and stuff like that. So that's one way that we kind of put something together, but energetically, you know, we kind of come out with the first three are like, you know, we're setting the tone, you know, we're getting people up and trying to get them all up front and in our face because we're full energy. So, I mean, I feel like our shows are nonstop. So those first three songs, we're going to hit them, you know, and then we might just kind of take it down a little bit here and there. So it's always kind of like a work in progress. It depends on what our set is like, you know, if we have a 30-minute set, or in most cases we're playing hour-long sets. So that's about 15 songs for us because our album is only about 35 minutes long. So we throw in a couple of new ones and a couple of covers that are really fun to do that get people really, you know, up and into it and singing with us. But yeah, it's always a work in progress. We've definitely had some sets where it's like that one didn't really feel as good, you know. So in rehearsal, we'll put something together that really feels good to us. And if it can really work within those guitar changes and not cutting out too much time, because we really like to flow into some songs nicely rather than just cut and stop at every song, you know. So I like talking to the crowd, but at the same time I like to be a little mysterious, otherwise I start like doing some stand-up comedy and it's really bad. So try to keep it like moving a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, once the album came out, you guys have played some shows since then. Have you noticed the crowd like reacting to songs, you know, that weren't out previously? Like, have you noticed the crowd reacting to certain songs like in a way live?
Oh, for sure. Definitely, like kind of going back to Stranger Days and Tilly, especially live. Tilly and Velvet's Drawn live. People have really been resonating with that big time. And also what's really cool is now that people can sing along. They know the words.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to see them singing back to us. And I know that we have some really awesome fans out there that they're at every show and they're up front. So I know what songs they really do like and gravitate towards big time. And I know that they know the words. So I'll get right in their face and they'll sing it with me, you know, and they're in the mic there with me. So I really try to bring them into our show as well and make everybody feel included.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, random side note, like a decade ago, I went to a Whitesnake show with my ex and we're on the front row and David Coverdale got down in front of the barricade and was walking down and just having people sing along with him.
Oh,
He
really?
was singing a new song and me and her knew it. And he came up to us and put the mic in our face and we sang along. Then he went down like 3 or 4 people and everybody's just like, so he came back to us and just had the mic in our face for like the next minute and a half. It was pretty funny, but
Really?
you would think, yeah, he would have like paid attention to what people.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Speaking of the live shows, you guys had this live, or excuse me, the album release show here about a month ago, right? Or no, it was actually just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, right?
It was. Yeah. June 20, what was it? June 28th, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Here in Las Vegas. Yeah. Awesome new venue. It's originally a like an event space. They were doing like event, corporate events, weddings and such like that. But they've opened it up to really try to bring in local bands. Is what they really want to do, is up and coming bands, and really give them the full treatment. Because their crew there is just amazing. I mean, they've worked with, Justin Timberlake on Saturday Night Live and stuff like this.
Okay.
With their lighting, sound. These guys are just road dogs, and they just kind of wanted to, kind of leave the road behind them and just focus here in Las Vegas with this space. And so we had the red carpet rolled out to us, and Shinedown opened up the night with a radio promo show. They came in and did about 5 acoustic songs, and then we went on after them. So it was really cool, really big space. So next time we're there, we're gonna pack it even to the hilt, even more. So that's what our goal is. But we were the inaugural rock band. So they've been doing a lot of country stuff out of there recently and stuff. So we were the first rock band, and just amazing place, amazing crew. So I really want to work with them on future projects and stuff. It allows for an immersive experience. We brought in my brother, who's like a world famous street artist, and his good friend came in and did a live painting of us there. And, there's food trucks and games. It allows for an outside band to be playing as well. So it's just a really amazing place.
Yeah, I saw that kind of surrounding it like it was an event. So was that something that you guys kind of spearheaded and put together, or was that the industrial, like the way they do things, or?
Right. So it's a little bit of both, because we kind of working with we have PR with Mitch Snyder at SRO, and when we were talking to him about doing a CD release show, he really was pushing us to do something a little bit more outside the box than just go in and play, try to make it a little bit more of an experience. And that resonated with me, because I kind of look at us as this alternative to just hard rock, almost like in a way that Jane's Addiction was to the Sunset Strip in the late 80s, early 90s, where we kind of have this visual and art aspect to our band as well, So at first we were just kind of like looking for a space that could allow us to do that. And the industrial sound became available to us, and it was just like a no-brainer. And they've been doing that as well too, with their events that they've been doing on the far west, I believe it's called. It's the country nights that they've been doing, and they have a huge space that allows food trucks to come in. They set up games. There's a cigar bar outside and everything. So it was just like kind of like fell in our lap, and it was like perfect. And it's really kind of like started a new relationship with them and here in Vegas. So we're really hoping again to do more with them, so we can kind of continue this and kind of just make our shows a little bit more immersive and unique than, I love plugging in and playing, don't get me wrong, but if we're given an opportunity to make it feel like there's a more of an event to it, and we can also showcase some of our other passions and stuff within that, then I'm all for that.
Yeah. I think, with as much stuff as there is out there these days, you got to like do something like that to set yourself apart,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard because, just like when you're, on Instagram, people are just, you got 2 seconds to capture somebody,
Yeah.
You got to get them to click. So if we can get them to capture them with something that's more than just, hey, we're playing, and that's awesome. And I know a lot of people will come out and see us just because we are playing, but we want to give them more, more bang for their buck, so to speak.
So for a band on their debut album at a release show, it's got to be like a surreal experience to be going on stage basically as a headliner above a band that headlines arenas. What was that experience like going on after Shinedown?
It wasn't I was not, gosh, what would I say? I wasn't worried at all. I mean, I'm kidding. He's an amazing singer. So following him is like, oh my gosh, I got to follow him,
Yeah.
you know? But they were super cool. They were very kind. They gave us a shout out before we went on, which is amazing. I mean, they've been around for what, about 20 years now. I mean, they're who is still together and lasts that long. These guys obviously write great songs, amazing band. They're great. And it's kind of, yeah, it's surreal, at the same time, we knew our place, even though it's like our CD release party, we're kind of like, thank you so much for allowing us to go on, to be here tonight and to share the stage with you. And I think that's kind of like a cool thing. We're very appreciative of our position. We love our fans. After our shows, I mean, I want to talk to everybody, So yeah, it's just yeah, surreal. I guess it's still surreal, now that you bring it up, I'm still thinking about it. Yeah.
So was that a surprise show, or was it announced on the radio that they were playing with you guys, or?
Yeah, so it was kept secret. We knew about it going into the night. At first, the show was going to be in July. Actually, it was going to be this last Friday, July 14th. But because the Shine Down became available to the Industrial Sound, bringing them in for this private radio event, they asked us if we can come in and move our date up and go on after them. So we had about 2 or 3 weeks to really kind of put this together. So it was just like scrambling. And so it wasn't announced at all. I think it wasn't announced until a few hours before, like, hey, Shine Down will be here as well, But yeah, it was top secret up until hours leading to our show.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that dude's voice is amazing. Since their debut album, it's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Kind of back to your guys' album for a minute. Something else I noticed is that all these songs are relatively short, and like I think it was 5 of them are under 3 minutes. Was this intentional, or is this just kind of the way you guys write? Or
it definitely, I'm gonna credit Dave Harris, our guitarist Dave, on that. He definitely comes from the school of get us to the chorus, don't bore us. Is the term that I've come to use on that recently. And so when I write with him, sometimes I might be asking, you know what, man, I got a little bit more to say here. And if you can give me, another 4 measures or, maybe 8. And so we have to kind of have a little bit of back and forth and compromise in what feels good to him and what I could write to and feels good with me. So a lot of those songs kind of were written in that way with Dave, whereas Stacy would kind of have a little bit more length, and there's always a guitar solo in there, for his shredding. Just kidding. But very colorful solos, I should say.
Yeah.
But he, as together as a band, we had to kind of work within what everybody's comfortable with. So it just kind of worked out to where it feels good. Now we're kind of writing in that kind of way now, where it's like, let's get to the chorus, let's get to the hooks. And sometimes when I'm writing in the verses, I kind of have these different tiers. I don't try to just go a linear verse into a chorus, so I'm always trying to find the right melodies to get us there and ride this wave quicker, so to speak. But yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a learning curve for me at first, but now it's kind of like, it's just kind of like second nature, muscle memory. Dave will send me a track and tell me, ask me to write to it, and I'm like, all right, I know what to do. I know how to do it now, as opposed to I don't really have to say, hey, can I get this or can I get that? Everybody's kind of writing for me in a way, it's like, of course they're writing the music that's speaking to them, but they also know, oh, I can hear Pete doing this, And so it's kind of just like flowing a lot better now. And we're actually working on a lot of new material right now as well.
When you write, so are you always writing lyrics like after you hear the music, or do you ever write stuff? Do you have like a notebook full of stuff you write, that kind of thing, or is it all just after you hear something?
Yeah, I have a notebook, and I also in my voice notes, or I have my voice notes I'll keep in, and also just my notes that I'm always have handy and available. But I also write without the music. So if I have a song title or an idea or a couple of lines that I'm kind of really vibing with, I'll jot those down. And then when music is sent to me, I'll kind of go back and see if that fits with what I'm feeling with the music. Also, too, sometimes when they send me a track, or if we're in the space, if we're rehearsing or together, like Dave was just here with me, and he'll stay with me, and we'll write out 2 or 3 songs right then. So
Wow.
we either are sending songs to each other, or if we're in the same space, we're working. But yeah, I kind of a lot of times will get the inspiration from the track as well too. Sometimes the words will just come to me from hearing what I'm given. So that's kind of like how Tilly worked out actually as well. It was just one of those moments in 15 minutes after Stacy giving me the track, telling me a story about one of his friend's daughters, and then in 15 minutes the song was written. Yeah. But that doesn't happen all the time. I wish it did. Sometimes I sleep many sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Many mopey days of being depressed, not finding the right words. My wife, upset at me that I'm so depressed because I can't find the words I'm trying to say, but it's a process, and I love the process nonetheless.
I know last time we talked, you said you had recorded 13 songs, so you had a couple extra, and you've mentioned writing these, like you're already writing other songs. I mean, I know this is pretty premature with the album just coming out, but are you guys like already focusing on that at all, or putting stuff aside for the next album cycle? Or are you going to worry about that next year or whenever?
I think we're tossing a couple of ideas around, whether I know that we've just put out the album, and kind of like how things work nowadays with people waterfalling singles as opposed to putting albums out, to get their algorithms up and keep, Spotify interested and everything like that. So it was really important for us to put out the album because we felt that this was a body of work that we create. We spent 3 years on the making of this, I mean, we came together as a band in March of 2020, and we put it out this past June in 2023. So it was just a little bit over 3 years that the band came together and put the full body of work out. So that really, we had to put that out there, and really kind of like set the mark for us. Like this is where we're at, and this is where we're going to be going. And so we have some ideas within using the songs in the album, whether it's like maybe we'll do some acoustic versions, or some other kind of, not necessarily remixes, but some other ideas within those songs. Release a single, maybe have an acoustic follow that of the version of that, and maybe sprinkle a little bit of new songs out there as well in the process. But yeah, definitely, I think that we definitely want to do another album for sure. But I think we want to stretch out this album as long as we can, get us through into next year, maybe into next summer with this album, and keep putting out some new stuff within that, and then go back in and just put out a full length again. Was something I'd really love to do.
And hopefully quicker than 3 years this time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. If this was like the 80s and 90s, when every bands put out an album every 3 years, I can understand it. But going back to that Instagram or social media where people only give you 2 seconds,
Yeah.
You're here and there. So we want to stick around for, we want to be shined down. We want to be here 20 years from now. So
Right. Well, I know last time I talked to you, Sean was with you, and he had mentioned that the idea or the goal was to, hopefully get on a tour opening for someone after the album was out.
Right.
Is that still like what you guys are looking to do, or what are the live plans going forward for the rest of 2023?
Yeah, so we're probably going to go back. We wrapped up our summer shows as of now, so we're going to be booking for October, maybe mid to late September. David's in another band and he's going to Europe, so we have to work around some other schedules of guys in the band as well too, which is unfortunate for me because I love being on stage so much. I just really want to perform, but I'm not going to stand in anybody's way. But so that's kind of what's happening right now. But we definitely are looking to get on a tour, maybe start something a little bit more regionally to a little bit closer to us and the surrounding areas, whether it's, Utah, Arizona, California, maybe hopefully get out more Midwest real soon. And, that could all change, as soon as we get our full-time management and booking agent. I'm hoping we're seeing the world real soon. But yeah, definitely more videos to come and definitely a lot more live shows. So that starting in early fall, we're going to transition to pushing more live shows more full-time on a regular basis.
I know you guys you released the video for Closer here back I think it was the end of May. So are you guys, like you said, you're looking to put out more videos this year from the album?
Definitely. I think we want to keep that video rolling, creating that content, maybe being a little bit more artistic with it. Not necessarily, we have 3 videos now, which are all performance. So maybe doing something that's a little bit more outside the box of performance, maybe a little bit more conceptual, lyric videos here and there and stuff like that. But that's probably going to keep us most busy from now until mid-September when we start picking up our shows again. So definitely focusing on doing a little bit more tracking within, whether it's like kind of like the acoustic stuff we're talking about and doing some videos within that, just continually creating more content and keeping making sure that we're out there and getting exposed and getting our, making as many fans as we can. So when we do hit those shows, we come to town, it's going to be, as many people up front and seeing them with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of a final question for you. I know we both share a love for the Cult.
Yes.
And I always when I think of the Cult, outside of the early stuff, like generally if I listen to them, I go back to Beyond Good and Evil. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that album, because it kind of came out after they had shifted their sound in the 90s and they kind of went back to that heavy rock sound. And I just wondered, as a fan of both alternative stuff and harder stuff, what your thoughts were on kind of that 90s transition from the self-titled album to Beyond Good and Evil.
I absolutely loved Beyond Good and Evil. I loved Beyond Good and Evil, and I'm a huge Cult fan. I make that known. Anybody that's going to listen to me, I'm going to tell them I'm a number one. The Cult got me inspired to do what I am doing. So I'm a diehard Cult fan. So I would say I definitely love early the Cult, getting into kind of Ceremony and the self-titled album and stuff like that, when it was the more grungy era, didn't necessarily resonate and speak with me as much. So when they came out with Beyond Good and Evil, it was just and that Rise, that first riff, and they started their shows when they put that album out and they were touring, they were starting their shows with that and it was just the build. It was monumentous for me. I loved it. There's the other track on there, the ballad, and the name escapes me. Whenever I'm on the spot, I can't remember my own lyrics, So.
Right.
But I think that's one of their best songs ever.
Yeah.
I think the production was really cool. I really did dig it. I mean, Matt Storm was on drums too. I'm a huge Matt Storm fan. I love Velvet Revolver. Everything he's done is awesome. So, I mean, it really kind of it spoke to me,
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know you might get kind of mixed reviews from people, but Dave
Right.
Harris, who's another guitarist in Crash Wayward, he's another huge Cult fan, and we talk about that album all the time. And ironically, Mike Gillies, our producer, worked on that album.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you know that before you worked with him, I
Oh,
assume?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
always ask him questions about the band.
Yeah.
So, and he of course knows how much I love them. So he's always kind of like telling me, Ian would say this and Ian would say that. And,
Something to parlay into you guys really is the Cult, is always kind of the masters of shifting their sound, but
yeah,
still sounding like themselves. Like they always fit into different eras of rock, but still sounded like the Cult. And I mean, I
right.
assume that you guys could do the same thing throughout the years because you've already on your first album kind of established that variance.
Definitely. That's yeah. I don't want to be kind of like the what you would say like the one trick pony. I mean,
Right.
there's certain bands like AC/DC that could just like put it out and it's always great. That's their sound. Um, but I want to keep evolving. I love all kinds of music. And I love hip hop. I love old school. I mean, I'm kind of like, an 80s and 90s kid. So I even listen to stuff like that. You won't ever hear me doing hip hop. I suck. But I love everything. I love disco. I grew up on R&B. I love heavy metal. I've performed in heavy metal bands. So all of us in this band are just like well diverse and have different tastes and flavors, and I think that's kind of works for us. So we're not going to be just like that's not rock enough or that's not this enough, and it's going to be about the song. If the song feels good to us and we think it's a good song, then that's what it's going to be. We're going to allow the song dictate our our road, our journey. And I hope everybody comes with us because I really want to be inclusive. I want to I want to be something for everybody. I want to see a rainbow of people out there at our shows, and singing to us. So
Well, I mean, speaking on that, kind of like you said, listening to everything when you're just driving in the car, just listening to music, is it one of those things where it's different all the time, or is there something you generally go to, like if you're just by yourself or with your wife or something?
yeah, that's a good question because uh I don't really create a lot of playlists. I do gravitate if I'm driving. I'll put on something new that I haven't heard yet so I can hear it, whether if it's the new Queens of the Stone Age or something like that, or I'll go back and I'll rediscover like Kings of Leon, early Kings of Leon stuff or Rival Sons or early Depeche Mode that was a little bit more before my time and stuff like that. I'm always kind of like going back. I love going back. I mean, I don't think it's because I'm, getting older and I'm just like stuck in what I grew up in listening to. I love new music as well. I love Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars. I mean, the 1975 stuff like this, and I'm always kind of looking for new sounds, or something that kind of like inspires me. So that's, I think, very important to me, and my kids too. They also bring a lot of new stuff. And I raised them on rock and roll. I mean, I was playing Metallica for them when they're like first and second grade, and I was dropping them off at school, and I would just blast it to see if I scared them. And they're just like, the Beatles. I mean, my kids are like one of the only kids that can go like most kids don't even know who the Beatles are these
Right.
days, or Stevie Wonder, you
Yeah.
know. So it was very important for me that I educated my kids, and so I'm always kind of like paying homage to that, and going back and listening to a lot of Queen and early new wave kind of stuff, kind of like bands like Japan and early Duran Duran, yeah, and early Motley Crue, Shout the Devil. I mean, that's what I would listen to before I went to go get tattooed.
Yeah.
So I just love music. So whatever it is, if it speaks to me, it's the world's greatest language.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple of genres I don't really care for, but there's pretty much something in every genre I can get into,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny because, like, I went to go see Candlebox last night with Dave Harris. He was before he flew out. We got some passes to go see Candlebox, and I wouldn't say that I was ever. I kind of always steered away from Candlebox because my very first girlfriend in high school loved them, and it always had like a distaste for them because of how our relationship was. Like
Right.
I can't like them because she was into them and she was terrible to me. This and that. But anyways, we're at the show and they play Far Behind. And that's like one of the greatest songs. And that guitar hook and that melody is like when you see it in person too. Sometimes music resonates and hits you differently than if you're hearing it on the radio. So
Yeah.
I implore everybody to go support local music because it might turn you on to something new that you didn't give a chance, whether it's like, flipping through your phone or you hearing it on the radio. I guarantee somebody's going to come and see us, not know who we are, think that we might look like idiots and not want to give us the time of day. But if he sees us, we're going to convert him. I guarantee it. We're going to convert most people that come and see us. Not everybody's going to love us and like us, and I'm okay with that. But I'm going to do my best to convince them that they will love us.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me today. It's always a pleasure, and absolutely loving the new album and looking forward to what you guys got coming this fall.
Awesome. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, Trent, and anytime, man, just reach out, and we love your support, and yeah, anytime. Absolutely.
There you go, Peter Summit of Crashing Wayward. A huge thank you to Jody Best of Best Bet Promotion for her continued support of this podcast. Huge fan of Jody and everything she does. The best in the business as far as I'm concerned. And also a massive thank you to Peter for taking some time out there to hit me up on Zoom and talk about all the great stuff we just talked about. So if you're new to the band Crashing Wayward, check out their album, Listen with an exclamation point. That's the album title, and that's also what you need to do, like I've said a couple times already. Hit him up on all the socials, give him a follow, and if you're here for the first time because you're a Crashing Wayward fan, I appreciate you checking us out. Like I said earlier, check out that previous episode, 372 with Peter and Sean, both from Crashing Wayward. I've also had on tons of people throughout the years, 381 previous episodes to this. I mentioned some of those already, but there's also been guys like the voice of rock, one of the greatest vocalists and bassists in the history of music, in my opinion, Glenn Hughes of Deep Purple and the Dead Daisies and Black Country Communion. Also had on Gene Simmons of Kiss, Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss, other rock and roll Hall of Famers such as Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses. I've also had on Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, Jeff Tate, formerly of Queensryche, Josh Todd of Buck Cherry, LaJean Witherspoon and John Connolly, both of Sevendust, have been on here separate times. Members of Corrosion and Conformity, Typo Negative, Prong, Saving Abel, Buck Cherry. Why did I just draw a blank? There's so many people to choose from here. Shooter Jennings, Helmet, Motley Crue, Whitesnake, Winger, Warrant, and I'm sure many other bands that start with a W. Firehouse, Trickster, LA Guns, Kicks, Slaughter, if you love that genre of music. If you love heavy stuff, Testament, Megadeth, Toxic Holocaust. The list is super great and super long, my friends. Dig through it all. TheThunderUnderground.com. You can listen right there. You can listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard, wherever you're listening right now. Hit like or follow, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, all that great stuff. If you hit Google, you'll find it that way as well. I'm sure the Ozzy song Thunder Underground will be at the top. We should be right under that. Follow us on all the socials. Wherever you see us, hit us up. Once again, it was a huge honor to talk to Peter once again. Crashing Wayward, great new band. Looking forward to what these guys do in the future. So a huge thank you once again to Peter and Best Bet Promotions. And of course, as always, DEB Concerts and Sunset Tattoo. And until next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to have a better reputation than the lead singer.
Thunder Underground, y'all.